Get ready.
There we are. Exciting.
Hi,
Oh, my dog is
Diana.
going to bark, by the way. I just saw the mail person walk up.
Oh yeah, I had to put my brother's dog up in the room, and I don't know how that's going to be after with like the scratching on the door. But she barks so much. I was like, oh no, that's not
Cool.
gonna
You
work.
might need to buy a new door at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you guys are on. Did you hear that?
I know, yeah. I'm waiting till 4. We're waiting till 4.
Woo-hoo.
Hi, everyone. People who are watching us on Facebook.
Sorry.
We'll begin on time. We're just talking.
Hi. Facebook
Hello,
Live,
everyone.
film streams, hashtag film streams, hashtag sea change.
Film streams. Like it's like a remix. That's always my favorite part of remixes. I'm going to start right on time.
Sounds great.
It's going to happen. Hello, everyone. Everyone who is joining us, in the process of joining us on Facebook Live. I'm going to get started in a few seconds. These are cool sunglasses, Chanelle.
Thank you. They're actually regular glasses, but because I'm sitting near the sun, they're starting to like transition.
Okay.
So
like, it's very Anna Wintour of you to be wearing your sunglasses indoors. I like it.
Anna Wintour.
You're like, producing isn't glamorous. I wear sunglasses indoors. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Diana Martinez. I'm the artistic director of Film Streams, and I'm here with Chanelle Elaine for a happy hour Q&A to celebrate the launch of Sea Change, Film Streams' new gender parity initiative. Woo-hoo. Yay! So I have a little bio that I'm just gonna say right now at the top, and then we'll get started. So Chanelle Elaine is a social impact producer working in community with filmmakers, activists, and philanthropists in advancing the global initiative of equality for girls and women everywhere. Founder of Creative Bionics, Chanelle Elaine's first feature, First Match, is a Netflix original and the winner of the South by Southwest Audience and Luna Game Changer Awards. Creative Bionics has also produced videos for the Novo Foundation, the Women's March on Washington, President Obama's Tribal Nations and Generation Indigenous Youth Conferences, plus many other organizations committed to equality and diversity. So thank you so much, Chanelle, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Diana, for including me on this really important day for film streams with the Sea Change initiative launch. I'm very, very honored to be with you and sharing in this day. So thank you so much.
You don't have to thank us. We're very lucky to have you. So you visited the Roots Akalap Theater before with First Match, your Netflix original. So some people watching on Facebook Live right now might know who you are, and I just gave the little bio. But as a producer, I just want to start with, maybe for people who don't know, maybe for some of us who think that we know, and maybe we're completely wrong, what does a producer do?
Oh, we're going to start there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that a good way to think about what a producer do is really if we're thinking about it in context of a film, that the producer is really responsible for everything that you see in that film, right? Like, so in the development of, writing the script and working, it can happen a couple of different ways or a few different ways in terms of if a fully realized script comes to you. And as a creative producer, as I am, being able to work with the director to realize the creative integrity that is being brought by that, and being able to contribute to that is really important for me as a producer. And then, being as someone who has also lots of ideas, but doesn't necessarily want to take the scribing helm, being able to connect with writers to help develop a story based on ideas that either we have as producers, or maybe the writer comes and we flush that out, to then getting financing for that film, for that script once it's developed. And then it starts to become, once that financing happens, what's the crew's going to look like, the department heads, and all of this. We're working in collaboration. The producer is responsible, but there's a lot of other people responsible for other parts. Obviously the director is hugely responsible for what that film is going to look like as well, and the shot choices that are being made. And we're working, when it's a good collaborative partnership, we're working in tandem with the director to get the cast, to get the department heads, to figure out the partners that we're going to bring in, and how we're going to kind of navigate the landscape in order to like realize the production. And so, there's not a straightforward answer, but there is an all-encompassing answer where it's like, we do the very, very little and mundane, to the like all in, making sure that everything that you see on the screen is as good as it can possibly be, so that production value of that film is way beyond the money that was raised to make it.
Yeah. Within the kind of hierarchy of filmmaking, right? You have like Hollywood filmmaking and independent filmmaking. Where does a producer kind of fall within each of these categories? Like, who is your boss when you're making an independent film? Who is your boss if you're working on a studio project?
Ain't nobody my boss. No. I be the boss, Diane. I mean, you always have to answer to financiers, regardless of the landscape, whether it's independent or big budget Hollywood films. So it's going to come down to that. And at the end of the day, I don't know, like, I don't necessarily, I mean, I guess people, can argue this, but I'm not really seeing it as like I'm answering to a boss, as much as like we are trying to realize a film, and that we have to do it in the best way possible. And so, being able to engage in conversation so that happens is really what it's all about, like, and so if a boss is creating situations that make it difficult for me to provide what the director needs, then we've got to sit down and kind of figure out how to like make it work. Because at the end of the day, what I really want is that, the director, I'm in service of the director, and although it's hard to be like, oh, she or he is my boss, but I'm definitely in service of the director, and wanting to like do my best in order to realize what it is that we need in order to make the film.
Yeah. So if you're thinking of the relationship between the director, producer, and financiers as a kind of partnership or a collaboration, tell me a little bit about film financing, because I think this is something that when we spoke to Amy Adrian, for instance, she was very clear about, women have a harder time getting their films financed. But what does that mean? Who are the people financing independent films? And then how do you go about kind of approaching different people to fund a project? How does the money fall into place?
I think it's important for me to kind of, at this point, kind of distinguish myself as a producer, right? Because we are talking, for me, I've produced one narrative feature. And so I can give you specific examples around getting the financing for that film.
Mm-hmm.
And I can share with you the tales of people that I know.
Yeah.
But my kind of everyday kind of financing is coming from clients who have engaged me to work on projects that they, initiatives that they're working on to collaborate and showcase the work of activists and philanthropy, in particular philanthropy and the work that's being done, and other nonprofits. And so my experience is a little different in that particular way. And it's what's, endearing for me, because in that way of me being able to make filmmaking, I've been able to kind of combine my experience as an activist and a community organizer with filmmaking, and have had a very unique way of being able to navigate the filmmaking landscape, which I feel privileged and honored to kind of be in existence in that way. And so if we dial back a little bit and talk specifically around financing, financing gets hooked into a lot of different variables, right? So when you talk about that it's harder for women to get financing, like that is something that is ironclad, right? Like we know that there's no debating that. And in that same way, there's no debating that it's harder for African Americans, and it's harder for people of color and women of color, that when we look even, at the statistics of, a female or woman of color making their second film, the time period between being able to make from your first feature to your second feature is 3, 4, 5 times longer than male counterparts, and that is directly aligned to how or who controls the financial system, right? So when whether it's independent or Hollywood based, because of the economic system that we work in and that we exist in, we know that that's overwhelmingly white and male. And in this case, we come out of a filmmaking industry that values white and male more than it values certainly Black and female, Asian and female, Mexican and female, and any other woman of color. It's a whole different strategy and convincing about how this film is going to be made, and what it looks like to create a scenario that the gatekeepers are going to greenlight it, right? Like in that way where it's Hollywood only has a handful of actors, actors of color, Black actors, that they feel are, as they call it, bankable. And if you're not falling under that rubric, there's no money. And so when we talk about financing, there's a dearth in the availability of financing for not only women who look like us, but women in general, to access that financing.
Yeah. I have so many follow-up questions right now. As someone who's, working in film, but also in like commercials, right? And kind of all these different areas of media production. And I think, a lot of people use the term gatekeepers, but are also really using it as like from the different areas of film that they're coming from. So who are the gatekeepers in your definition? Like, who holds the keys to like the different levels to be able to create diversity and inclusivity and gender parity within Hollywood?
I think it's more important to talk about who's knocking down the door.
Okay.
At this point, like, I want to be able to own, or not, I want to be able to, I am owning my power. And therefore, I am making the decisions that I need to make to create the opportunities that I want in order to make the films that I want, but also create a filmmaking community that represents who we are, because the old guard, if you will, has maligned the filmmaking industry into a place that is unforgiving and mean and one-sided. And so in this, in this time that we are in, I think it's, for me, I would rather speak to my ability to create the opportunities to make the type of films that I want, as opposed to having to navigate a old power structure that we gonna tear down.
Yeah. For a filmmaker, no, that's great. And for a filmmaker who, your work is so intertwined with your activism, right? Like you just put together this 4th of July protest in Brooklyn, and it was publicized by BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And how do you see those two things functioning together for you? What was the moment that you thought, oh, I don't just like film, and I don't just care about these things, I can actually like put them together and create a career out of it?
How much time do we have? No.
We got time.
I want to be careful, because I don't want, like, I think that it would be very easy to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that, and kind of and being a little bit disparaging of like certain experiences that I had, that like then was like, I ain't messing with that anymore.
Yeah.
So I will say it like this, in that before I graduated from film school, I started to have a pretty regular gig at that, luckily, 2-3 years outside of film school, it was this gig that was like really kind of like a bread and butter, if you will. Like I could do this gig a couple times a year, and then kind of go off and do other things that I was interested in, and if I lived in a minimal kind of way, it would float me, right? And as I continued to become more integrated within the industry that was creating short form content what I found up close and personal was how vapid it was, how expendable people were, and how mean it was. It literally, I would be working, and connecting with people who were working tirelessly to realize projects. And then at the drop of a hat, they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm working with them to produce these projects. And to be clear, this is not nonprofit or philanthropy or anything
Right.
I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And you form relationships with people, and they'd be gone because the idea that if you make a mistake, you're expendable,
Mm-hmm.
that you're never going to work in this town again.
Mm-hmm.
That I've had people in be like, do you know who I am? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't, and it ain't going to change the price of rice either. Yeah. So, and so as I became less comfortable with that and realizing that I had kind of moved from kind of the community work that I was doing, I started I needed to get back into volunteering, which I did, and I started working with a couple of nonprofits and young women, and doing writing workshops and short film content, and then the way in which, like, very often it works in filmmaking. And one of the things, maybe we talk about later, that we have to kind of think outside the box about, is the way in which opportunities come to you through people that you know. And that's basically how I was able to start to get to see how I could start to work within the nonprofit landscape and do video, and engage with people who were working in an organizational way to, it, particularly now, dismantle systemic racism or advancing girls' rights, and that I could be a part of that community and produce videos that showcases the work. I don't want, like, I'm careful in my words, because I sometimes what gets said is like, we're going to elevate this work, or we're going to give voice to this work. And the work has voice. The work has so much voice that it's changing, the way organizations are doing things, and it's changing policy. So I'm not elevating a voice. I'm a small cog that is, I'm being graced with an ability to record that voice and put it where they need me to put it, in order for for more people to be able to outreach. It's like another outreach kind of strategy to be used. So yeah, I'm showcasing or collaborating with that work in order to share it and outreach to a larger community or audience, if you will.
Now, I have a question, and
Okay.
this question is certainly coming from me because of the kind of person that I am. But so, like, this Sea Change initiative, right, came about for, from the founding of Film Streams. It was, a woman-led company, Rachel Jacobson, our founder and our executive director, until a few months ago. So obviously this was something that was, like, really important to her. It was something that was really important to me, because it's the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years, really. But I will say that sometimes caring so much about something and then seeing how little things change, and it's my job, like, it's just disheartening sometimes. So as someone else who kind of, your job and your passion are kind of one and the same. Like, how do you get through times when you're like, am I changing anything, or will anything change? You know, because it's such a part of like who we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, I think that what's important about the work that we do, right, in understanding how we affect change is how are we affecting it with the people who are closest to us. It's kind of like, I talk often about, we'll get overwhelmed if we try to change the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we are engaging with our friends, right, if we're engaging with our family, if we're engaging with ourselves, even, like in that way, that like the work starts here, right? So we get up in the morning, what are we doing to take care of ourselves first? And then how are we engaging with the people closest to us? How can we help them realize what it is that they're doing? How do I work on local initiatives? Because when I work on local initiatives, it engages people locally. It inspires people locally. They talk to more people, and they talk to more people, and they talk to more people, and then that bigger engagement happens naturally. And so I think that, but to talk specifically, like when I think about, like, I've seen, Diana, I have seen amazing, brilliant, powerful young 15-year-olds,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like talking about how to change the systemic racism in this country, how to change the way in which government is operating, and um, and one, man, I was not that way when I was 15.
Yeah.
So I feel,
Yeah.
I try not to be disheartened about that, because maybe if I had that much fire at 15, then the 15-year-olds wouldn't have had to, I don't know, like
right. Yeah.
we have to stay out of that thinking, or else we get frozen, right? So it is so when I think about like the power that is the generations that have come up after me, like what I get from that is so that I am not disheartened by the fact that like they have to work so hard because I wasn't able to push the needle as much as I had envisioned, when I was 20 years old, or 50, not 15, when I was, 25, is that now what I need to do is do the work so that I am realizing their demands. Like I am working towards their demands, because their demands are our demands, right? But like, in New York City, every single day there are protests. I organized it with an incredible uh, number of activists and filmmakers and historians. We put together this incredible uh, uh, grouping of people who work tirelessly to uh, uh, see Confronting July 4th, a march to and rally to honor Black and Indigenous activists, become like this labor of love. And, when I wanted to do that, I wanted to do that because I know the experience that I have as an activist and as a community organizer. And I can show up for a protest. I can show up, but I wanted to be able to contribute in a way that also felt like I was being a part of what was being demanded.
Mhm.
And so I kind of forgot your question, so I hope I'm still answering it.
No, I think you did answer the question. My question is, how do you stop from being disheartened sometimes? And I think
Yeah,
that
right.
uh, your answer of, if you try to change the world, that's overwhelming. But if it's local, if it starts with your family or your community, those are manageable expectations for yourself.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. And if you will, just for a moment, like, in that way in which we all struggle so much with the language that we tell ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I'm working on a daily basis is saying, like, I'm creating change. I'm working towards change. I am the change. And within that, like, if I'm staying solidly in that, I don't have a lot of space to be disheartened, because I'm just constantly pushing. And that, as a producer, throw up a barricade, throw up a block. Like, that's my people hear me say this all the time. Like, that's my jam. You want to give me a challenge, you want to, like, throw up a roadblock, like that's the way that, like, I navigate. That's what I want to do. I want to know how to, like, how am I going to get through this roadblock, because that's what's going to inform me when the next one comes and the next one comes. And so, we like to call them fires when we're producing. Like, if we don't have, if you're expecting them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're expecting that, like, uh, we already know people don't want us to make films.
Mm-hmm.
We already know that, like, no one is going to give us, $20 million out the gate off of our first pitch when we go into a room. Even if we've made a really successful film for them, we still are going to have to fight tooth and nail to do it. But uh, the quality that we rely on is that, no is not an answer that we accept. And no is not an answer that's going to deflate me or dishearten me. Quite the contrary. It's going to inspire me, and I'm going to keep pushing.
Yeah.
And yeah. Now that,
Mm-hmm.
we talk, like, sometimes it's easier said than done too, right? And
Right.
so sometimes, that doesn't mean that, like, I'm not navigating the way that it feels when, you understand that, like, someone's trying to make you invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But I just, to the degree that I'm not going to own that,
yeah,
then, yeah.
I'm going to actually take this opportunity, for anyone who's watching. I have a couple more questions, then we're going to move on to the Q&A. So if you have questions for Chanelle, please write those in the comments below. Angie is looking through those, and she's going to send us those, so we'll be able to get to those. On a positive note, Chanelle, I want to get to the lightning round, which is my favorite portion. But before that, I have a question, which is sort of along the lines of, like, what we were just talking about. One of the things that I think is why representation is so important, I think. And I think why films with women directors at the helm tend to be, more diverse than white male directors and all of that is because I think women and people of color have their whole life of consuming media been really good at empathizing and connecting with protagonists and people who are not them. Like, we're so good at, like, identifying with white male characters in a way that, like, white men have rarely been asked to identify with, like, Black women on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that kind of empathy that's built really makes more creativity, I think, in some ways. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you is in your media watching, whether it's a film or television show, do you have any kind of like media that you feel was the first time you saw yourself, or that you were like, oh, that's a story that I know?
That's a story that I know. I can say to you that who I connected to the most as I was growing up, because of the choices of films that she was making to be in, was Cicely Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not fair because now I get dated, but I watched it recently.
Yes,
everyone, not
it was
when I was
yesterday.
a kid. But like,
At
watching
the tail end of your
Selma
teen years
or
yesterday.
watching Miss Jane Pittman, watching Cicely Tyson with her craft, and seeing her embody character in the way that she did, really brought me into connecting to what I was seeing on the screen in ways that I hadn't before. And, same with Diane Carroll. The choices of the body of work, Diane Carroll with Julia, which was like the first Black female main character on TV. Changed the land. That was like, the ways in which like that was starting to change. And so those are really, two actors and that body of work that as a young girl, I connected to. Yeah. Wait, can I tell you a quick story?
Yes.
So I was in Whole Foods in Union Square in New York, and I'm in line, and maybe like 6 or 7 people ahead of me. I'm like, wow, that woman really looks like Cicely Tyson. But baseball cap,
Yeah.
completely dressed down. I'm not thinking it's Cicely Tyson, because no one else is also reacting as well. Like, but as I keep watching her, I'm like, I mean, she looks exactly like Cicely Tyson. Like, and then I noticed who was behind her, and it was the actor Kimberly Elise. And I was like, oh my God, it is Cicely Tyson. It's Cicely Tyson. And by this time they're like checking out. And first of all, I'm annoyed because like there's no one in the Whole Foods line is like being like, there's like literally royalty like in this line, right? So I like rush to like get checkout, and I see them both across the street of 14th Street, which is a very busy street, getting ready to get in a cab, and I can't let it go. And and I'm not like fangirl, like in New York City it's like you don't do that,
right? You're not,
but
yeah.
like
Be
it was
cool,
Cicely
Chanelle.
Tyson. And I ran across the street, and just as she was getting into the cab, all I could blurt out was like, "I love your work." And the greatest thing was like this black man, this my black gay brother sister came running over and was like, "Was that Cicely Tyson?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes, it was Cicely Tyson." And it was like one of the pinnacle New York moments for me. So
Yeah,
thanks for letting me share that. So if
that's
you see
amazing.
Cicely Tyson, give her props.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're supposed to be cool.
I'm not hearing you right now.
Oh,
okay,
weird.
there. Okay, I got you now.
Okay. So I'm waiting for questions from Angie. If you have questions for Chanelle, leave them in the comments down below. I think it is time to begin the lightning round. Are you ready, Chanelle?
No.
Well, I sent you the questions, so you should be ready. Okay, we'll start with an easy one. So you walk into a movie theater. Where do you sit?
Oh, okay. First of all, when I saw that question, I lamented about how we're not walking into movie theaters right now. So, but when I walk into a movie theater, I like to sit just a little bit above the middle.
Okay.
So, as you're going in, like there's the middle part of the theater. I like to be a little bit above that.
Like
and
the
then
top 1/3, kind of. The bottom of the
there you go. And then in the middle of that row.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely like to be there.
Now that you reminded me, though, I feel like this is a question that I feel dates me. Do you watch films on your computer, or do you like find a way to hook them up to a television to watch them?
Yeah, I want it to be a bigger screen.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely, either watching on a television or a big monitor.
Yeah.
Like
I think
I'm on a 13-inch
okay
MacBook
like
Pro. Huh?
I think the youths are okay with watching on a laptop. I actually am still like an HDMI person. Like I don't trust casting for some reason. I'm like I gotta hardwire my laptop.
It never works that great, the casting, I have to say. It always kind of drops out. Sometimes it works okay, but I haven't casted in a while, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, because you gotta hook up. Okay. You have a very important meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to play a song to hype you up. What is that?
I'm not going to give you a satisfactory answer because it can change.
There's no wrong
change.
Well,
but like, I just mean in that way of like, I have this like great one song and, so it shifts, and I can tell you that often a go-to is the African artist Fela, or even his son Femi Kuti, or I can go the other spectrum with like Outkast, if like I want to, I've been known to do a little Kim just to like get myself riled up. So it really depends. I'll tell you, a friend of mine who I believe is a friend in one of my besties and producing partner has turned me on to Salt, SAULT.
Okay.
And if you haven't listened to her, like, I will definitely put that out there that like, that's definitely a jam to be like, it's been on repeat ever since she was like, have you heard this album? And I think that was about 3 weeks ago. So yeah, Spotify is like, oh, you only wanted to listen to this album? So
like, here's more artists.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the biggest misconception about your job?
The biggest misconception about producing is that it's glamorous. movies are very associated with celebrity and red carpets, and so I think there's a big intrigue with movie making that has nothing to do with the long days and the tedious moments of making sure that you have a balanced budget when department heads are spending more money than they have in their budget, and the late night having to go on a run and get cable coverings because you realize that the distro is going to be exposed on a public sidewalk. And so you have to go to a 24-hour construction deli in Queens at midnight to go get this cable covering. I say that because we literally just had to do that. Not too long
right. That was a very specific example.
It's very specific. So but I think that's true. Is it like the glamour of filmmaking, the work and the toil and the tears, the happy tears, the hard tears, the sad tears that get you to that day of premiere and that is everything, gets a little forgotten by those who aren't in filmmaking, which in some ways, to be honest, Diana, is it bad because it means we've done our job? Mm-hmm. Right. We've done our job well. If that film is connecting to an audience in an emotional, inspiring, questioning, demanding kind of way, even, then, and suspended reality for a time being so that they could just live in the world that was created. Like, we did our job. So, it's that misconception is because we do our job so well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your job is to make it look easy.
Our job is to make it look easy.
Also, people watching, we need your questions in the comments down below. For Chanelle, about Sea Change, anything else that you might want to know about filmmaking. Next question. Mm-hmm. You have secured an unlimited budget. However, you can only remake a film. What do you remake?
I got this question beforehand. I still have trouble. I didn't come up with a good answer, I have to say. And so I'm going to say this, that there are many films, earlier when you were talking about how women have been able to connect with, white male characters because that's so much of what we see. And really quick, I'm going to digress from the answer really quickly, but also saying that, as Black people, as people of color, it is a given that we're going to watch white content. Mm-hmm. It is also a given that when content is labeled Black, that white people aren't going to watch it. Mm-hmm. And so, one, the problem that our content isn't universal, mm-hmm. is an issue. And two, that there isn't this kind of cross-cultural pollination so that, and I would take it a step further, that it's, that we're not only building empathy, we're building solidarity, right? We're building solidarity amongst us because we are allowing ourselves to see our stories in ways that aren't siloed, so that people ignore them because of how it's been labeled. I can tell you, Diana, that I just got a text from a friend that says that they can't figure out how to post a question. So maybe we should do
Okay.
little...
If you want to post a question, you just go on the Facebook Live feed, and you should be able to leave a comment in the comment box right below the video. If for any reason it's not showing up, maybe try refreshing your browser and then re-clicking back on the live link, and it should be able to show up there. We're getting a couple questions coming in. But if she just wants to text you the question, we can also do that. She has direct access.
But so can I go back real quick?
Yeah.
In the remake is that I'm not going to, again, similar to the music, I'm not going to pick a specific movie, but I would say that the opportunity to have Black female directors, not even, it's hard, right? Remake but that we have the opportunity to make our films as opposed to having white male directors make those films, which has been historically the case.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah. I think about what you just said a lot. So I, like, in undergrad, like, I was actually coming from English literature, and there was like a great kind of like Twitter hashtag going around. I think it was sometime late last year, and it was a whole bunch of Latinx writers poking fun at the kind of stereotypes or tropes that are used in like Latinx literature. And so it was like this weird, kind of code switching back and forth between English and Spanish unnecessarily, or, talking about living in the little village, or, describing a plate of food so romantically. And there are these things that you see in the Latinx literature that wins all the kind of literary prizes. Not only that, all of the films by directors of color get labeled as such, it's that they're also expected to make a certain kind of film about that experience, right? They're not allowed to kind of make a romantic period piece that has nothing to do with slavery or whatever, right? But it's precisely those texts about identity, and specifically how like traumatizing it is to be of that identity, that like tends to be what's rewarded and what's funded. So I think that that's something that kind of exists across the arts. I think that there's an idea of the kind of film or artwork that a person of color should make.
Absolutely. And I think that's what is so kind of engaging about Insecure, right? Like Issa Rae has been adamant that, like, that's not the film that she wants to make. She want or content that she's interested in making, that she wants to just be able to like look at life as it is and be funny, and like I can, I don't have to like have some like political navigation that's happening, and and I think that the room for all of the different, like, that's the thing, right, is like having the space for, because if you put 10 filmmakers in a room, there's 10 different ways in which there's 10 different stories, and so that way in which you're talking about that people get siloed and having to create basically films about race that are historical, right? Like Hollywood's not all that into financing films about race that are about right now, you know, or
Right.
10 years ago,
Right.
It's still about, no, look how it was in history, you know, as if it's not happening now. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right in like who gets, you know, who gets opportunity, who gets the financing, and what does that look like based on story.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions here. One of them is, what film has emotionally or psychologically moved you the most?
Film has psychologically moved me the most. Sorry. Actually, I'm gonna say Shirley Chisholm's 72, which is a documentary film. Um, you know, in that way, to be able to see the power that was Shirley Chisholm, um, and uh, that kind of unabashed, like unfiltered, you know, and even like working within the kind of government scape, that Shirley Chisholm wasn't taking no for an answer. Um, was a film when it came out. Gosh, how long ago was that now? Is that 10 years old? I'm terrible at like length of time, but
Look right now.
It was like a really inspiring film for me to watch.
2004.
2004. Whoa, I said 10. It's 16.
Yeah.
16 years ago. And yeah, it's interesting because like when I think about that, like I'm thinking less narrative and, you know, more about like, you know, films that I see around like the Black Panther movement. But you know, I like, I mean, you know, but we can talk about like a film like Moonlight,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't kind of fit the tropes that we're talking about, that got to be, you know, that was made, and that uh, engaged its audience, uh, me included, uh, in a story that was told narratively in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And if one of my other besties, who was a co-producer on that, yeah, that's a shout out to you, Veronica. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool. So the other question, this person wants to know if you, or how do you envision the future of film, of the film industry changing post-COVID? It's a big question.
Oh man,
but
I think,
but I guess
Christy,
the way I would maybe modify that question is, do you think that this will change in any way, or how do you think it would change in a way for women directors to be able to get their films made?
so post-COVID specifically, not like kind of as we're in this kind of movement for Black lives, right? So specifically COVID.
You can frame that question however you'd like.
I
I think there's arguments to be made that all that, you know, COVID is doing is kind of amplifying the inequities and disparities that were already in place pre-COVID, right? That it actually hasn't changed the world. It's just like amplified the world as it was.
Right, so, right. Yeah. Right. So, and I think that the question is talking specifically about like how filmmaking looks, or like how the the industry itself looks. Well, I'll try to touch on that a little bit. I feel like my experience in like knowledge in terms of like what industry is doing for post-COVID is limited to what I'm reading and who I've been talking to, Christy and Veronica, and in that way in which like in that way in which like productions have to take care of their people in ways that will look very different than they did before is very true. And so creating space to keep people healthy, and putting in the protocols to realize or to make films within even more of a bubble than we've been in before, right? Is interesting. The other thing is that for a lot of independent producers, it could become very cost prohibitive to make films post-COVID because of the demands that insurance companies are going to have with COVID-19 writers and like what's going to happen. So, a lot of independent producers, myself included, given that we are not in production in any shape or form, with a tiny bit of exception, there was no reason for me to keep my insurance, and as that changes, going back to my insurance company to get insurance, like that cost could be astronomical.
Right.
It's already something I don't like paying. I have to pay it, but I don't like paying. So like, when it's 3 and 4 and 5 times more because, now there's a COVID-19 writer, what does that mean for my ability, even in my, independent producer, we think about that the narrative and documentary long form feature filmmaking. But even for me, when a lot of what I'm doing is short form documentary content, I still need insurance. Right. And I could lose jobs because I don't have it. So there's that on that side. And then I think on the flip side is, there's a lot of creativity happening around like, virtual projects. And, I have an opportunity to kind of push the envelopes and see like what I can kind of come up within that landscape over the next few days. So, in that same way, I think, what we were talking about before, where it's like this situation, look at the art that's been made, during that, some incredible art has been made during this time. And incredible music has been made. And so for filmmaking, how this pandemic creates a opportunity for us to be more mindful in the way in which we do things. I think that is there, and that the fact that we'll probably have to navigate, that costing more.
Yeah.
I saw this statistic. I think I saw it this morning. That was like, how many people in the US have lost their insurance since the pandemic started? It was like 5,400,000 people have lost their insurance since the pandemic started. And then it listed all these other countries and their number was 0, so
yeah,
there's a lot to kind of navigate in that space for sure.
Final question for you.
Mm.
What's next for Chanelle Elaine?
Well, Diana, as we get to know each other more and more, you'll get to know that like I keep things pretty under wraps.
Okay.
Not because I don't want to, not because I'm coy as much as that I'm careful, and I want to be able to kind of cultivate that energy in a closed cosm of people. So
Yeah.
you know the toil and the trouble is like building, and then like we just come out and it's like, and you're like, oh my God. So I say that to say, I continue to work with activists in capturing that work, and I am working. I'm not ready, but I'll tell you later.
You're not
I'll tell
ready.
you
That's
later.
fine. You don't have to tell
But
me.
there's definitely good things. There's
Okay.
definitely good things brewing, and I guess the other thing that I would say is that I'm very interested in continuing conversations with film streams, with other institutional film programs, with studios, in collaboration and partnership to, work together in upending the systemic racism that is the filmmaking industry, and the ways in which like I can contribute to that, that we contribute to it together, that the people who are listening to this Facebook Live launch of Sea Change initiative, woohoo! Thank you so much, Film Streams. That we're a community of people that are capable of creating the change that we want. And so definitely at the forefront of what I'm doing is strategizing about how to continue to be in dialogue with people who are envisioning the type of change that I am envisioning as well.
Great. We're out of time. For everybody watching, thank you all so much for watching. Watch First Match on Netflix. If you've already seen it, watch it again. And then after you're doing that, go to filmstreams.org/seachange to learn more about our gender parity initiative. Look for the director's chair icon and all women directed films that we're programming virtually, including Bora Kim's House of Hummingbird and All I Can Say, premiering today on filmstreams.org. Thank you so much, Elaine or Chanelle. Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone who's watching.
Thank you so much, everyone.